What if I told you that a single speech inside a packed congressional room just cracked open the quietest, darkest secret in American politics, and almost no one in that room wanted the public to notice? Because when one lawmaker stood up and demanded full transparency on the Epstein files, not pieces, not summaries, not carefully curated scraps, but the entire unfiltered record, he didn't just challenge a committee. He challenged an entire ecosystem of power built on silence, immunity, and unspoken protection. And in the first 30 seconds, you could feel the room shift. Not because he raised his voice, but because he said the one thing no one else had the courage to say. Stop hiding the truth.
Lawmakers still fighting for real transparency just called out the entire political establishment, demanding that the Epstein files finally be released in full. Jamie Raskin isn't just exposing a scandal, he's exposing the rut underneath it.
Thank you kindly. My amendment's simple, Mr. Chairman. It would not let this bill take effect until all the Epstein files are released. My Republican colleagues have put forward multiple bills this markup that reflect what they say is a renewed focus on protecting kids against trafficking and exploitation. Well, this is the test. If our colleagues are serious, and I believe they are, then they should be happy and eager to join me in supporting this amendment. The text before you is the same text as Mr. Massey and Mr. Khanna's discharge petition that every Democrat and 4 of our Republican colleagues have joined in. In just the last 48 hours, we've seen how important it is that the public actually get to see the Epstein files for ourselves. The Oversight Committee has received Mr. Epstein's entire 50th birthday book, courtesy of Mr. Epstein's estate. This includes the now infamous and slightly juvenile birthday note and drawing that President Trump denied existed at all. In fact, he sued the Wall Street Journal for $10 billion for reporting that Trump had written this suggestive and lascivious note with the drawing of perhaps an underage girl's body. Hard to say exactly what it is, but in that note, he draws an outline of a woman's naked body, a young woman's naked body, wishes Jeffrey Epstein happy birthday, and then ends it with, "May every day be another beautiful secret." Well, this is now public, and it clearly includes the president's signature. He's disputing that it's his signature, but it looks exactly like about 100 other signatures that we have from the president, including on federal legislation. So let's not allow this to be another beautiful secret before we proceed. Let's open up the Epstein files. The book also includes some disturbing, never before seen images that appear to depict Epstein grooming young girls. It includes a never before seen document where Epstein and a longtime Mar-a-Lago member are joking about selling a woman, a quote, fully depreciated woman, to Donald Trump for $22,500. You can see it yourself if you have any doubt about it. Look, it's time for all of us to decide, Democrats and Republicans alike. The country is unified around this. Are we going to be on the side of transparency and accountability, or are we going to be on the side of the human traffickers and those who collaborate with them and collude with them and protect them? There is a stench of corruption, predation, and exploitation that now hangs over this whole matter. And we are seeing one of the greatest cover-ups of our century unfolding in real time. Which side are we on? And that cover-up, of course, starts with Alex Acosta, Donald Trump's Secretary of Labor, who gave Epstein a ridiculous plea bargain, ending the federal case against him for no apparent reason other than his wealth, his connections, his political power. There was a multi-count federal indictment ready to go, and Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of Florida, gave it up and instead traded it for 1 count of solicitation. It didn't even mention child sex trafficking. 1 count of solicitation under Florida state law. He got the sweetest of sweetheart contracts. He was free in the daytime for several months, and then he went and spent the night in jail. And allegedly, he continued his criminal activities. grooming and procuring girls and having sex with underage girls and young women. So, this is about corruption. This is about the wealthy and powerful being able to manipulate the American justice system to get away with their crimes against kids. Let's release the file to the public. Vote yes on this, everybody. Let's make some history today. Let's make some history that we are going to see that the Epstein files actually come to light. That's what America wants. The most liberal people, the most conservative people, people across the spectrum want to see the files. We don't want dribs and drabs of the files they want us to see. We want the files they don't want us to see. We want the entire case file that they've got. Let's clear the air. Let's get the truth and the facts out there. Let's put an end to this corruption and cover-up. Let's do it on a bipartisan basis. I hope my colleagues will support the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California, does the gentleman insist on his point of order?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman's amendment would introduce.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, I fail to see.
Gentleman is recognized to speak to his objection.
I fail to see how the gentleman's obvious case of Trump derangement syndrome has anything to do with this bill affecting immigration law. It's therefore not germane. I also question whether the gentleman's vicious attack on the president's character is in violation of the House rules, but I'll stick with the germaneness question for now.
Does the gentleman wish to speak on?
I certainly do. I don't know what deranged Trump syndrome is because I've not met with his psychiatrist, so I don't know what you're referring to with deranged Trump syndrome. In any event, you haven't contradicted a single fact that I put forward. It seems like you want to try to impinge on my free speech rights or my speech and debate rights. That's a bizarre turn of events, given that we've just been talking about the First Amendment and freedom of speech. But in any event, this is completely material and relevant. It's about the Acosta deal is about providing immunity from federal prosecution to Epstein and all of his unnamed co-conspirators. They were protected by that sweetheart deal. And this is about.
That's when everything changed. The moment wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was precise, almost surgical. A lawmaker looked across the political spectrum, left, right, establishment, outsider, and said, if you claim to care about protecting kids, then prove it. Release the files. Every person watching knew this wasn't another speech crafted for a news clip. It was a direct strike at decades of secrecy surrounding one of the most protected criminals in modern history. And suddenly, the argument wasn't about politics. It was about who benefits when the truth stays buried. As he spoke, something unusual happened. He tied every child protection bill, every anti-trafficking promise, every emotional appeal from both parties back to one basic test of integrity. If lawmakers truly cared about protecting young people, they should welcome sunlight, not fear it. And then he revealed something that made the room go tense. The Oversight Committee had just received a massive set of documents from Epstein's own estate, including a 50th birthday book filled with explicit notes, disturbing sketches, and comments that no one expected to become public. He laid it out plainly. No scandals embellished. No rumors exaggerated. Just raw facts sitting in front of Congress. But the implication was unmistakable. If this much was already surfacing, what else was still being hidden? That's when you could practically see the discomfort ripple across the room. Because this wasn't just evidence. It was evidence that someone, maybe several someones, wanted quietly tucked away. And that raised a question far bigger than Epstein himself. Why does Washington always seem terrified of the full truth? Rumors online have swirled for years, claiming that powerful figures across industries feared their proximity to Epstein becoming public. None of it confirmed, of course, but the whispers alone were enough to make the establishment nervous. And when a lawmaker publicly demanded an end to selective transparency, you could tell the political world wasn't ready to go there, but he didn't stop. He moved from the new evidence to the original betrayal of justice, the infamous plea deal. The agreement that gave Epstein the sweetest of sweetheart resolutions. A deal that erased a multi-count federal indictment and replaced it with a single weak charge under state law. A deal that let him walk free during the day for months. A deal that allegedly allowed him to continue preying on girls while technically under supervision. And here's the part many forget. That same deal quietly granted immunity to Epstein's unnamed co-conspirators. Not just leniency, actual protection. Protection that shielded people whose names were never publicly revealed. In other words, the justice system didn't just fail. It participated. When the lawmaker explained this, he didn't accuse anyone directly. He didn't point fingers recklessly. He only laid out what the record already showed. A wealthy man bought his way out of accountability while normal people would have faced life-destroying consequences. And the room hated hearing it. Because acknowledging that truth forces another question. Who else was protected? And why did a federal prosecutor decide those protections were necessary? Before the committee could settle, another representative erupted, accusing the lawmaker of having deranged syndrome toward a political figure he never even mentioned. The attack came out of nowhere, as if the speaker hoped that mocking him would distract from the substance. But the lawmaker didn't flinch. He calmly replied that he'd never met the individual psychiatrist, so he couldn't diagnose whatever fictional condition was being thrown around. Then he delivered a line that froze the entire room. "You haven't contradicted a single fact." The silence afterward told the whole story. When people can't refute the truth, they attack the messenger. But this wasn't just bickering. It exposed something deeper. The moment his critic tried to shut him down, he revealed exactly why the files remain hidden. Because facts threaten power. Because sunlight strips away excuses. Because documentation doesn't bend for politics. And that made the next part even more devastating. He reminded them that America claims to have one justice system, but in reality, it has two. One system punishes ordinary people with unrelenting force. The other wraps the wealthy and connected in layers of insulation they never have to admit exist. And whether you're conservative, liberal, or something in between, everyone knows that's true. It's why Americans across the spectrum, regardless of party, are demanding that the Epstein files be released in full. Not altered, not sanitized, not redacted into meaninglessness, but opened completely. That's why this moment mattered. Because he wasn't fighting for a political victory. He was fighting for the idea that justice must apply to everyone, or it isn't justice at all. And you could tell that message hit nerves on both sides of the aisle. No one wants to be caught defending secrecy when the public wants answers. But no one wants to be responsible for the fallout if those answers end up confirming long-standing suspicions. That's why they shifted in their seats. Why they raised irrelevant objections. Why they tried to interrupt him. Because the closer his argument got to the heart of the issue, the more fragile their comfort became. Then came the most unsettling revelation of all. Among the newly surfaced materials were images appearing to show Epstein grooming young girls, plus documents depicting conversations about selling a woman as if she were property. That wasn't speculation. That wasn't rumor. That was in writing. Seeing it documented in such a cold, transactional tone showed exactly what kind of world Epstein operated in. A world where exploitation wasn't tragic, it was business. And the more the lawmakers spoke, the more obvious it became that the powerful people connected to this world had every incentive to make sure the files stayed locked away forever. But the lawmaker wasn't having it. He said if some people wanted the files hidden, they should at least admit it publicly. No more pretending. No more acting like releasing the truth would somehow distract from legislation. He forced them to choose between accountability and convenience, between sunlight and secrecy, between courage and comfort. And you could tell from their reactions that many wished he hadn't asked at all. The deeper he went, the more he connected the dots. Decades of institutional protection, a plea deal that made no lawful sense, evidence tucked away in estates and archives, and politicians who claimed to fight for transparency only when it benefited their side. He showed how each piece of the story formed a single pattern. The truth only comes out when the public demands it loudly enough. And that is exactly what is happening right now. Across the country, people from every viewpoint are calling for the same thing: unredacted disclosure. Not partisan spin, not selective leaks. Full exposure. Because everyone knows the truth doesn't fear the light. Only corruption does. And when a lawmaker says, release everything, he's not just exposing Epstein's network. He's exposing the system that protected it. That's why his message landed with such force. He said releasing the files isn't just about accountability for past crimes. It's about restoring trust in government. Because every time officials hide behind legal jargon or procedural smokescreens to avoid revealing wrongdoing, public confidence collapses a little more. And once trust is gone, it doesn't return easily. Nations don't fall all at once. They erode. They rot slowly, from inside out, through secrecy, immunity, and excuses. But he wasn't warning Congress about political optics. He was warning them about democracy itself. When justice becomes selective, when sunlight becomes optional, when powerful people can manipulate the system to shield themselves, equality under the law becomes a myth. And the only antidote is radical transparency. He didn't frame his demand as an attack. He framed it as a moral responsibility. Because if the government can't release information about one of the most notorious predators in modern history, then what can the public trust them to reveal? And if they're willing to protect unnamed co-conspirators in a case this severe, what does that say about the hidden decisions made every day beyond public view? That's the uncomfortable truth no one wanted voiced. Because this case isn't just about past horrors. It's about the system that allowed those horrors to flourish. It's about the wealthy buying their way out of consequences. It's about institutions bending under pressure. It's about victims who still don't have answers. And it's about the silence that powerful people rely on. The lawmaker brought all of that into the light. And the reaction in the room proved how rare that honesty is. When he finished, the argument wasn't about amendments or parliamentary points or political strategy. It was about courage. It was about who had the backbone to stand for truth when the truth threatened to expose people with influence. And whether Congress admits it or not, that moment drew a line that will follow them long after the cameras stop recording. Because now the country is watching, and Americans aren't asking anymore. They're demanding. They want every page, every photo, every contract, every communication. They want the truth, without filters, without redactions, without protection for the powerful. And they deserve it. Because justice doesn't belong to politicians. It belongs to the people. If you believe the truth shouldn't be optional, if you believe transparency isn't a threat but a necessity, and if you believe sunlight is the only way to disinfect corruption, then make sure you stay with this channel. Subscribe, hit like, and share this video so more people keep this conversation alive. Because the fight for transparency is just beginning, and the more aware the public becomes, the harder it is for anyone to hide.